great pleasure to welcome Dr. Sarah Luria to the Southbridge Jacob Edwards Library this evening to present a talk on Thoreau. The title of the presentation is Thoreau in Town, How Thoreau Saw Our Settled Landscapes and How He Can Help Us Now. Dr. Luria is on the faculty at the College of the Holy Cross in Worcester, and she has come here today to present about environmentalism and how geography and literature intersect. And her areas of specialization are research into 19th century American literature, geography and landscape studies, environmental studies, American studies, and political oratory and rhetoric. So I would like to welcome Dr. Luria to our community, and she's already had the opportunity this afternoon to walk around and see some of the highlights of our fair town. Oh, nice. And it was wonderful to be able to show off some of the really historical, environmental, and just really great architectural pieces that we have to offer in Southbridge. And I hope that it was of interest to you, and it's certainly fun for me. And I would like you now to please welcome Dr. Luria to present her talk this evening, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And I would have come out here anyway, but Margaret had the great idea of giving me a tour of Southbridge. And I'm a big landscape historian fan, so I have to say it was a highlight of the day. We got into a conversation about just how you preserve history while also sort of looking forward and relating history to the present, so you're not just looking backward. And it reminded me of a great concept by the archaeologist Tim Ingold, which is that the landscape isn't a stage that we live on, it's a story we live in. And that we have inherited this story from the past, that if you look at the landscape, you're really looking at a collective work of art over time, and that it's an obligation we have by being in that story now. And so the more we understand the landscape that we're in, the more we tell the story of its past, the more we can make better decisions and informed decisions about ways to preserve it, but also maybe change it according to the way we now understand we want to be living. So the past has everything to do with being in an educated and really, I think, inspired present, and you know, a smart future. So I just, you have a great story in this town. I was in awe. A big shout out to the Optical Museum and Dick Whitney's work there. I'm sure you've all have seen it before, but anyway, I got the inside and the outside tour, so it was really great. We can talk a little bit more about how some of the things I'm going to say tonight might pertain to Southbridge as we discuss among ourselves sort of the ideas I've put out, and a little bit more about what Thoreau means to you, what you value about Thoreau, if you've read him, and how maybe he has influenced your life. So the talk is called Thoreau in Town, How Thoreau Saw Our Settled Landscapes, and How He Can Help Us Now. And I'm really going to talk about, let me take us into the first slide, and I'll get started. I want to start with one of the big problems that comes up in Thoreau when I teach him to my students, and I'm going to maybe I'll jump back and forth to get to my slides. And that is, my students come in to class and they're pretty disappointed that Thoreau's big escape, big retreat, big experiment in simple living happened an mile and a half away from his home in Walden Pond, still within the limits, city limits of Concord. And one of the big things they balk at is the fact that he went home for dinner for a home-cooked meal. And I've even heard that his mother washed his socks. I have no evidence of that. The implication there, right, is that Thoreau cheated, that he's somehow a hypocrite, that he somehow didn't really live simply. He had all the conveniences of life, but sometimes he would go and pretend at living, roughing it on the land. in a way, we've got a kind of into the wild syndrome here. My students also love the whole story of Christopher McCandless. I don't know if you've seen the movie or read John Krakauer's book, but the idea that, really living in nature means a survivalist experience. You want to go out there, kill some bear, and be and not cheat, right? You're totally self-sufficient. Well, if you know the story of Into the Wild and the young Christopher McCandless's experience of going out into Alaska and trying to make it on his own, didn't end well. He dies out there because he doesn't know enough about nature. Nature is a big deal, and so Thoreau wasn't that kind of looking for that kind of wilderness experience. He was looking to find the wild in Concord, and the wild inside the village and in the town and by the pond and in our daily lives. And he goes to Walden to be a little bit more immersed in it and inspired. So for me, what I really want to share with you tonight is what I particularly value about Thoreau, and it's exactly what I see, not as the problem of Thoreau, but sort of the brilliant ingenuity of his experiment. It's a plan for kind of radical reorientation to your life that all of us could some way tailor to our own. It's a doable. It doesn't require going to Alaska. It requires going to your own backyard and sort of seeing it with new eyes. And so I'm going to discuss the way in which Thoreau really blurs the boundary between the wild and his town life. And let's just show what I mean. I'm going to map that a little bit in geographical fashion here. Just to make the point, there's Walden Pond, right? It's 1.5 miles from Concord Village. And interestingly, one of the other big problems of Walden Pond is by 1844, 1 year before Thoreau goes out to live on the pond, the Fitchburg Railroad comes in. And not only does it come in, but you can see it from the pond and you can hear it from the pond. And so if you've ever been to Walden Pond, perhaps you have felt that the Fitchburg Railroad still roars right by on the banks. I don't have a good, it's basically right about here, and there's the pond, and if the leaves aren't on the trees, you can certainly see the train. There it is, breaking into your bucolic experience and your retreat to Walden. What I want to suggest today is just sort of how inventively and ingeniously Thoreau accommodated the train into his nature retreat. That sometimes, even though he would rail against the train, one has to pun when one talks about Thoreau, whose name is even really should be pronounced as, in a sort of punning fashion, Thoreau is how you say the name. I'm going to go ahead and say Thoreau because I grew up away from New England and didn't know better. But Thoreau, who was indeed Thoreau, would rail against the train. As you might know, he was a big walker. He walked from Concord to Worcester, for instance. Why take the train? He would say, why did God give us slaves? Because for us to walk. So he walked the whole length of Cape Cod. All things you can still do because the summer's young. So I'm just putting it out there. But anyway, Thoreau made peace with the train. He really, in a way, made it fit into his nature experience. And part of the reason, part of the way, and as we'll see, he even used the train tracks as a sort of a favorite conduit between the town and the pond as he would shuttle back and forth and keep those landscapes associated with each other. Blur the boundary between them rather than say, I want to get as far apart as possible. I want to feel I want to close that gap as much as possible. Is pretty much the idea I'm putting out here. Just to, if we're talking about what $10 earned in 1970 and we adjust it for inflation, what $10 would be worth today, and it always turns out to be, I can't remember how it goes. Anyway, through inflation, but there's a Thoreau scholar who tried to sort of calculate what the sound of the train would have sounded like to Thoreau. This is 1 year after the train has come to the area, so it's a big deal. It's a big new thing. Before then, it was carts, horses, and walking was the moving noise that you'd hear. In the human moving locomotion noise you'd hear in the landscape. The train, Thoreau says, takes about a half an hour to disappear in terms of its sound. You would hear it coming from far away, and it would linger in the landscape for about half an hour. And the train came 5 times a day. So that's 2.5 hours of loud train noise. The way the Thoreau scholar calculates it, he said Thoreau was like living next to an airport. That's how radical it would have sounded in those days if we kind of bring the volume up to modern day level. I might sort of give you a more pedestrian example. I live in Newton. Every time I go out for a walk, I'm going out to get some peace and quiet. And no sooner am I out there than I hear the of a leaf blower. And Thoreau, you could say, lived surrounded by 200 leaf blowers. I mean, while he's trying to think and while he's trying to focus on nature. And yet he copes with this, what?
In lawnmowers.
Lawnmowers, right. So he copes with this amazingly well, and that's what I want to say, and that's how he's useful for us today and what I most value him. And again, I want to hear your thoughts on what you most value about him. We know a lot of normal, good, STEMmy engineering kind of things, ways to address the environmental crisis. You reduce our fossil fuel consumption, we develop alternative energies, solar, wind, etc. We reuse, we recycle. I want to just put a plug in there too. We develop our imaginations. Imagination is a huge force in combating environmental degradation. And what Thoreau is really being valued by scholars these days is the quality of his environmental imagination. And that environmental imagination, while it does involve more familiar transcendentalism of Emerson that we'll see at work here in some of the slides, we're really appreciating the way in which he is very scientific at the same time that he's very poetic and very literary and very transcendent and philosophical. That if Emerson sort of used nature to sort of enter the oversoul and the celestial atmospheric sense of being, Thoreau did his transcendentalism by digging down, by really getting down on hands and knees and studying the ants and the dirts and studying the world microscopically. And that is how his world got bigger, got sort of transcended his limits and made it an endless space. So Thoreau, as a scientist, both land surveyor, geologist, astronomer, inventor, and just a botanist, a real quality observer of the forces at work in the natural world, is a kind of a model that can be a kind of an imagination that we can all develop. I give you his dates there. Not an old guy by the time he died, alas. And that's a 2-year experiment at Walden Pond. And those are the dates he was at Walden Pond. As I say, the railroad came in 44. He was there in 45, camping on Emerson's land. Let me go back 1 second. So one of the reasons why people have problems with Thoreau or rail against him is because we often don't actually read what he said. We kind of go on receiving information about Thoreau. What you think he did, what you think he said. So what better way for us to celebrate his 200th birthday than by reading some of the words that he wrote. So we're going to do that. And just to refresh your memory, I thought we'd do a little primer on how to read a Thoreau sentence. He's a word artist, so he works in words, so it's good to remember. Words work in a certain way. Sentences, for instance, move from left to right. So as we encounter the sentence, what happens to us as a reader? And this is a kind of classic Thoreau sentence and classic Thoreau move. I have traveled a good deal in Concord. It comes right from the first chapter of Walden Economy. Let me ask you, I've traveled a good deal in Concord. Is anything surprising or unusual happen in that sentence?
He went on foot?
Yep, he went on foot. Anything, any word, any other reactions? How does that sentence read? Anything, just try to, yeah.
I mean, it's humorous. He's traveled a good deal, but only in one spot.
Great, okay. What do you expect he's going to say? I traveled a good deal
in America, or...
In America, in the world, in Africa, in Europe. I'm an explorer. I traveled a good deal in Concord, right, in one spot. So what does it make you appreciate about the verb travel, for instance? I've lived for a long time in Concord is how we would normally say that. So what does travel say that lived doesn't say?
Explorers.
English teacher.
He's exploring and observing.
Great. So he's exploring, observing. If you've ever had a small child or been with a small child, you can see just how you would travel a good deal in Concord, right? They go at a snail's pace. They're down on all fours and like, ooh, a ramp. And then we're going to be there for a long time because it's a ramp. So that's really sort of the pace at which Thoreau went through his world. I call this the gotcha sentence, that Thoreau likes to do a gotcha sentence. He surprises you. He lures you into complacency. I've traveled a good deal. You already know what's going to come in concrete. And in that small gesture, that small surprise, that imaginative way of thinking rather than a conventional way of thinking, he wakes you up, which is his ultimate goal all the time. He fools you, and which is part of his obnoxiousness and why people kind of don't like him, is because he's sort of superior and kind of messing with you and manipulating you, trapping you in order to correct you, right? You silly person, you think you can only travel in the world. You can travel a good deal in Southbridge, which we did today. But in that small gesture, right, he really opens up so much. That small sentence says so much. One thing we can appreciate, Thoreau here has invented the staycation. This is an environmentally sustainable means of traveling. There is no airplane pollution. There's no car. It's affordable. Everybody can travel a good deal in Southbridge. And it opens up the world, that you would travel like that. You would be a tourist in your own town. So what is that? You know, just by putting the words in that way, all of a sudden you look at your city in a new way. It's like, oh, because sometimes I've lived in Newton so long, I sometimes think, if I have to see that tree one more time, I'm going to fall asleep. Like, this is the same walk to town. I've been to the same walk. For Thoreau, it's, well, you know how different that is from the last time you came here? As he says, a radical revolution is always going on in nature. You know, the next day the irises are out, the next day the daffodils are out, but then even the daffodils are one day further out, so you want to go and see that. So, you know, forget it with the boredom about your walk to town. He would not feel any sympathy. So that's the Thoreau move, is how to go from conventional to unconventional thinking, how to get you to see with the scientific, literary, inspired, environmental imagination, to be curious about where you live. So here's the staycation element of it. Some people have to go to the theater. Some people have to go abroad for their entertainment. Thoreau writes, I'm just paraphrasing it there. And here I'm taking us into the fourth chapter of Walden Sounds, which is a beautiful chapter. If you haven't already honored Thoreau by reading a little bit of Walden again or for the first time, I highly recommend you do so. Sounds is a great chapter to start with. You don't have to start with economy. It's a 70-page slog. It was a terrible way to begin the book. It loses a lot of readers right from the get-go. Sounds is short and sweet, and it says a lot about sounds, as we're going to see. My life itself here on Walden Pond, but now you can imagine even in town, was become my amusement. It never ceased to be novel. It was a drama of many scenes and without an end. You might watch the world go by sitting in a Paris cafe. Thoreau watched the ants crawl by sitting in a Concord garden. It was a drama, a stage with entrances right and exits left. And this is where we can appreciate him also as a literary imagination. This is a familiar trope. The world's a stage. Life is a drama. And he's just sort of tailoring or bringing that drama down to the natural level. It doesn't only require humans to be interesting. So for him, many scenes without end. And that's how you can feel he was able to travel widely. There was so much to see, so much going on. And then I'm going to, okay, that was not what I want. So, in sounds, we really get a wonderful picture of Walden's soundscape. So, what all the buzz that's going on. And I've highlighted words that really get at the noise and the activity of this quiet, idyllic scene that Thoreau is painting here. As I sit at my window, notice he's inside his house. I'm going to do this sort of slow English teacher fashion where we'll just, so you can read ahead if you like, but I'm going to be going Thoreau pace through the sentence. So if you want, you can just kind of hang with me and not get more confused. You also have the quotes as a takeaway in your laps if you've got a handout. As I sit at my window, I even like the fact that he's not necessarily outside. He's in the house, is right there. It's kind of like a bird's nest, he said. This summer afternoon, hawks are circling. So hawks are flying around about my claim. Here's the drama. The tantivy of wild pigeons. Tantivy, my Walden edition says, is a rushing, galloping movement. So Thoreau's kind of showing off there. And also being a poet. The tantivy, what a great word. Almost automatopoeic, sort of. You know, it has a certain sound to it, like a bells, like tintabulation of the bells. A tantivy of wild pigeons. Wild, by the way, right? I like that. Flying by 2 and 3s athwart my view, so they're in my way, they're part of my world. Or perching restless. Look at the sort of oxymoron there. Perching restless. So you get this sort of agitated stillness of Walden. It's not a dead place. It's not just like inert. right? There's all this energy in the scene, in this drama. Just that suspense, perching restless. Because why are they perching restless? Because they're looking for the next move, right? They're looking for the worm. They're looking, they're out there doing their life thing. On the white pine boughs, the pines surround Walden, still do today. Behind my house gives a voice to the air. Air is quiet. They're giving it a voice. They're the voice. The voice of air is all this bird cacophony. A fishhawk, dimples, pastoral language there, the sort of bucolic saying dimples, the glassy surface, calm there, so again the movement and the calm, dimples, glass, so it's glass calm, but there's the dimple pierced by the fishhawk of the pond and brings up a fish. See what just happened there? Here we just have this sort of beautiful scene. A fish had just gotten gobbled. Right? This is an attack. This is a murder. This is survival. Nature, red in tooth and claw, as another poet says. Brings up a fish, sort of, oh yeah, as if the fish is like, woo, you know, thanks. And then he repeats that. A mink steals out of the marsh before my door and seizes a frog. You can just sort of imagine. Annie Dillard observes an insect eating another insect, and it's just disgusting. But here it's beautiful, right? By the shore. The sedge is bending under the weight of the reed birds, flitting hither and thither. So all this activity, all this agitation, and look at that, and is part of this long bucolic list, bucolic violence survival list. And for the last half hour, I've heard the rattle of railroad cars, now dying away and then reviving, like the beat of a partridge, conveying travelers from Boston to the country. I'm just saying what that is. What do you make of, you know, the train galloping like an iron horse through the scene, like the beat of a partridge. The way I at least gloss that is not, you know, chugga 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 chugga, but of the beat of a partridge. Any first thoughts of just like what that adds to our train, or how that describes the train?
Blends it into nature?
What?
Blends it into the scene, nature?
Morphs right into it. It's a natural thing. It's just a bird, another bird noise. Here comes the train, not an airplane, which is kind of bird-like. Any other appreciations or comments on, I don't know about a partridge, if there's anything special about why he chose a partridge. It might be because it is a sort of nice-sounding bird, as opposed to wren or sparrow, maybe. I don't know if there's a certain wing thing. As you'll see, he'll use another bird in a second, which sort of makes a little bit more sense. Anybody know anything about birds or partridges?
You don't see too many of them in Boston.
Yeah, okay, so it does give
So
you a
they're
sense of
luring people away from the
specialness.
city.
Yeah. So like the beat of a partridge. So yes, he's incorporated the train into the scene. It's not a disturbance, it belongs. He's naturalized the train. Technology isn't scary. It's a part of nature, and indeed it runs on wood and physics and all sorts of laws and energy of the natural world, and humans are a part of nature, and we made it because we need to move a little bit further because that's what humans do. We have eyes and we want to go, and we have brains and imaginations. It's a part of the natural world, and also by comparing it to a partridge and maybe not a horse, he also just, the scale is interesting, right? He sort of minimizes the train. He smallens it. He quiets it and he smallens it at the same time, or makes it smaller is a better way to say that. Conveying travelers from Boston to the country. So he's kind of a spectacle there. It's not private, right? He's like part of the scene. And people are staring out and seeing this little guy. They are not being able to see the fishhawk probably. They're going too fast, and that's the other reason why you want to walk. You know, train, you're like, you missed everything. You missed the best part. All right, so, and again, so we get the gotcha, right? You think the train's going to be terrible, and instead the gotcha is the train actually, no, not a problem, at least not here. Fits right in. The train did create a new landscape in Massachusetts, and it's interesting how much the train becomes a part of the story of Walden. He mentions it a lot. And here's, in the same chapter, just a couple of paragraphs later, he acknowledges, and watch what happens here. The whistle of the locomotive penetrates my woods summer and winter, sounding like the scream of a hawk. Maybe that's a little bit more what we want. Now that's a little less odd than the partridge. Anyway, the scream of a hawk sailing over some farmer's yard. It's still an agrarian landscape. So the train is just in this farm, you know, farm with the hawks sailing, informing me that many restless city merchants are arriving within the circle of town. I think, again, of just the restlessness of that stage that he had outside his cabin. Now, humans are restless, too. All this movement is happening in town. All this movement is happening at Walden. We're all going about our life survival business. or adventurous country traders from the other side. As they come under one horizon, they shout their warning to get off the track to the other. More of the soundscape, right? Here come your groceries. Nor is there any man so independent on his farm that he can say to them, nay. We don't have a self-sufficient landscape anymore. Even in agrarian Concord, where people have their own land, people really are sort of find themselves in a position where you can't but want to buy made clothes or strawberries from Weston just because of the affordability or the saving of labor or whatever. So we're no longer self-sufficient. We are now in a networked economy where we are interdependent and we are buying things from each other. Nor is any man so independent on his farm that he can say no, he can opt out, he can just be totally cut off from the economy. And then what does the train do to the nature? Because there are all these expanded markets, the huckleberry hills are stripped and the cranberry bogs are raked into the city, because now we have places to take them, so we can get many more of them because we have many more people to sell them to, because we can carry them a lot further while they're still fresh. It's nice to sometimes diagram a Thoreau sentence because he's got so much going on in these images, and you can see that I even cut stuff out. But here, you can see Walden is right next to Concord because it's within the circle of the city. He can hear the trains come, arrive at Concord from Boston this way, saying, here are your groceries, the merchants, and coming from the west, from the countryside. You know this Massachusetts landscape. It was big for Southbridge too, no doubt. The west, the country coming into Concord with all its huckleberries and its agricultural products that are going to go into Concord and then on to Boston, and they're all connected by the train. So those little dots are the train. So it's a sort of lifeline that's creating, or through line that's creating a very blurred, blended Massachusetts landscape of industrial, agrarian, urban, village, and indeed the train is going to turn Concord from an agrarian town and an industrial town to a suburb of Boston. And we already have some people working, commuting to Boston on the train to Concord in the mid-19th century. So you're seeing the suburbanization, you're seeing space, those divisions between country and city shrink by the train, and they almost sort of shuffle as these spaces all become much more intimately related. And that's what Thoreau, rather than hating, rather than being a Luddite back in England who ripped up the tracks because they were wrecking the landscape, just found ways to accept and manage and respond creatively to and intelligently to. So here you have him in a very dramatic way, sort of giving us the reality of his world and the effect of the train in it. So the train is everywhere in Walden, and critics have noted that it really leads to the climax of the book. Second last chapter, Spring, another great chapter to read, goes on and on about the train track and the train bed, which he follows on the way, as he says, to Concord. It's kind of a shortcut even to his house on Main Street. His family lives right, not exactly in the heart of town, you can still see the house. It's just about where the Concord Library is. So 2 blocks from the main village, from the center of the village. So he follows those tracks. Why? Because he's a practical guy. It's drier because of the drainage, less muddy, less underbrush, more direct. So easier to travel, more groomed, and so he takes it, at least some of the times he takes it. And what he becomes fascinated then with is actually the nature that the train creates. That the train has kind of birthed a new landscape in Concord, and all of a sudden, instead of wanting to avoid the train tracks, he's down on all fours studying the banks of the train bed. And what he's examining there, and I'll just describe it to you before I take you into a picture and a quote about it, is that because they had to clear the vegetation off the soil in order to dig a kind of path for the train, they had to take away the grass, they had to take away the trees, you exposed the sandy underground layer. And what you got then were these amazing sand formations that came from the cooling or the heating of that sand layer over the course of winter and summer. Thoreau called it sand foliation, so sand plants. Few phenomena gave me more delight than to observe the forms which thawing sand and clay assume in flowing down the sides of a deep cut on the railroad through which I passed on my way to the village. And this is from the spring chapter. This is not the Thoreau, the Concord deep cut, that's actually from a railroad track now, a trail in New Hampshire, and I think Thoreau's deep cut might have been a little bit deeper, but just to give you a little bit of a sense of the sort of valleyed landscape. he's talking about. So this entry, few phenomena I'm interested in more than this vegetation along the deep cut, starts a 2,500 word description of the sand cuts. And so he goes on for about 6 pages on the kind of marvels of nature's activity along the sand cuts. Here's an example, and there's a great photograph of one, and that is from Concord, and I'll tell you something about it in a second. The material was sand of every degree of fineness. Notice the scientific observer here, the measurer. And as I said, I've left a lot out. He gets a lot more sort of specific in other places, of every degree of fineness, but also making it kind of art-like at the same time, right? Science and art. And various rich colors keep us interested, commonly mixed with a little clay. When the frost comes out in the spring, and even in a thawing day in the winter, the sand begins to flow down the slopes like lava. Thoreau's reading a lot of geology right now, so not only do you sometimes, you can hear him sort of using all the poetry and the beautiful nature writing that he's read over the course of his life. He's also using his science writing too, and he's engaging in a debate that's going on in geology. That photograph is by Herbert Gleason, who was a great Concord photographer, and he took it in 1900, and it's just, you know, obviously this is only a steal from the web, but it's a beautiful thing. Now I'm going to take us into a little bit more of it. And the innumerable little streams overlap and interlace with each other, one with another, exhibiting a sort of hybrid product which obeys halfway the law of currents and halfway that of vegetation. So here he is specifying what is the force behind this, what are the laws of nature, what's creating this. It sort of grows like a plant would grow, and it sort of flows like lava would flow, or like water would flow, or gravity would create from the sloping. As it flows, it takes the forms of sappy leaves or vines, making heaps of pulpy sprays a foot or more in depth, and resembling, as you look down on them, the lacinated, lobed, and imbricated thalluses of some lichens. Or you are reminded of coral, of leopard's paws, or bird's feet, of brains, or lungs, or bowels, and now I'm sad that I cut out the next word, which is, or excrements. So that could be another gotcha moment. You're almost like lured into all those lobes, bowels, excrements. I don't know if any of you were able to see Leela Phillip here, my colleague, who I know has spoken here twice, but she's a poet who really grooves on, and a creative nonfiction writer, grooves on botanical terminology. And you can see here, right, you can even kind of hear the poetry of thalluses, lobes, lacinated, imbricated of some lichens. So, you know, he's giving a very, again, sort of melding this kind of picturesque and scientific attentiveness. He's making it kind of gorgeous while he's also being fairly accurate, you know, giving some really rich information about the specifics of this natural scene. And he's making correspondences, you know, we have these things, we do that next thing that's coming, we're like the birds, and all those. That's just, he's relating it to animal life, this natural formation, and by association to us. This climax of Walden leads Robert Thorson, who's a geologist who's been really fascinated in Thoreau's emergent and really sort of astute geological intuition, in addition to his reading of the geology, which is emerging as a science in the mid-19th century. It leads to his most important line, and we'll get to that in a minute. And this again from Spring in chapter 17 of Walden. Thus it seems, so this is the transcendentalist Thoreau. From all this observation in nature, I'm going to make a big philosophical finding. I'm going to make a conclusion about how nature works. Thus it seemed that this one hillside illustrated the principle of all the operations of nature. So the microscopic leads to the transcendent insight. This phenomenon is more exhilarating to me than the luxuriance and fertility of vineyards. This is the frost coming out of the ground. This is spring. Fresh curls spring from the baldest brow. There is nothing inorganic. I just say a quick gloss for inorganic. You might say there's nothing that isn't alive, that doesn't lead to life. There's nothing that is inert or dead in our world. Everything has this kind of life energy to it, or there's nothing unnatural, including the train. The train is part of this natural world, and it's remaking the natural world in a way that he finds fascinating. I'll spend another minute on this quote. This is a typical claim he's going to make, right? Again, surprising. You'd think the luxuriance, the fertility of vineyards, one we like wine, grapes, how beautiful is a cluster of grapes, how picturesque is that kind of farmland. Think of the way jigsaw puzzles have beautiful broomed farms on them. What could be prettier, especially to a guy who grew up in Concord? Even more than the luxuriance and fertility of vineyards is this. Anybody want to just say, this road cut, this deep cut of a train bed with this sand foliation, what do you make of that? That he would find, why might he, sometimes Thoreau's being hyperbolic, and you don't know whether to really take him seriously. But I think we can take him seriously here. Would you say, can you see his point? Knowing how beautiful, if you were in Italy right now on a terrace overlooking a beautiful, luxurious vineyard, you might say, I'm going to Italy. Does he convince you? No, what might the argument be for finding this more
Everything has a purpose.
Everything has a purpose? So, meaning here?
Because it's natural instead of man-made.
Right. I think so. The deep cut was man-made, but this is the earth speaking. This is what the earth does, and he's going to describe it like that in the next quote. This occurred spontaneously. This is what nature's reaction to our being part of, like beavers, one of those agents in nature. This is what nature comes back with, rather than all the kind of, I want wine, I want to make money, I'm going to have some vineyards, and maybe I'll make them orderly and attractive at the same time. Great. Anyone else want to just, yeah.
Well, he was also, and it's also going back to, I've traveled a good deal in Concord. He's trying to embrace the beauty of the area.
And
Yeah.
Who
needs the Italian landscape?
That's the ultimate pitch. Is if you go to Italy, you will not have time to go to the deep cut. You will not spend this kind of time there. You'll rush. And have you checked out the deep cut? No, that's a beautiful site. That you'll really like. Oh, the vineyards in Italy. I mean, look at a postcard. But this is something, and you can begin to understand why he gets this kind of pleasure, because he does this kind of looking. What were you going to
I was going to say, like, natural chaos that nature made, as opposed to vineyards that are planned and specific.
Trained.
Yes.
Splayed, right?
Exact.
On those wires, so that you can pick them more easily. It's all human. Everything, nature's shaped to our comfort and our pockets and
all
our
cultivated.
gluttony. What?
It's all cultivated,
It's cultivated.
controlled.
Right. This is nature's cultivation, and you can almost see that just it comes out in this like a sci-fi movie, and then it kind of grows. And again, you wouldn't want to miss it. Day to day, it's changing. It's freezing. It's thawing. It's constantly responding. There is nothing inorganic. What is save? You don't hate the train. It's organic too. It's the thing we want to do is study. Well, I'm anticipating my next slide. So here's how we can think about that darn train. There's nothing inorganic. That's the greatest line for Torsen. And here's what Robert Torsen, whose book I'm going to recommend to you in a minute. It's at the bottom of your, and suggesting further readings, Walden Shore. The idea, this is Torsen's gloss on what we just talked about, and you'll see he agrees with this, the idea that every living thing in Earth, including its human institutions, like the train, like the village, like the roads, is the consequence of the planet's, here comes the transcendent statement, great central life. This is a Thoreau snatch from Spring. It's geothermal furnace running full blast within. Look at the way in which Thoreau turns the Earth into its own sort of foundry. It's this industrial engine, which is hot on the inside, and that's why the sand formations form in part. That's why all this freezing and thawing is happening. It's because there's the heat of the earth getting exposed to the cold air, and that's pushing out this water, and it's pushing out these minerals that are part of the soil. It's Thoreau's great insight, his transcendental. Earth itself, he saw, was a single living specimen. It's all connected. The mantle, the core of the earth, the sand foliation, the sand underneath that grassed over, treed over, walled-in landscape, and the train is now, just like the mink and like the hawk, just another agent of change and nature use introduced into it. So it gets to the great Humboldt idea of the cosmos, of the natural world being that interconnected, and we are just some of the many links within it. This is a quote from a really great essay by William Cronin, an environmental historian who wrote Changes in the Land, a beautiful reading, a beautiful history of American landscapes with a real focus on New England. So it's another great thing. I don't have it listed here, but I should have put it there. This is just an essay he wrote called The Trouble with Wilderness. This is Cronin sort of commenting on the message I've been trying to put out tonight. The task of making a home in nature, think of the hut by Walden Pond, is what the poet and great nature essayist Wendell Berry has called the forever unfinished life work of our species. Right? We are a certain species, and our job is to build the right kind of a nest, a sustainable nest, rather than an unsustainable nest or an unsmart nest, considering where our nest is. We're in an environment, in a landscape. If wildness can stop being just out there in Alaska, in the wilderness, and start being also in here, in Concord, at Walden, at the train track, and in ourselves, then perhaps we can get on with the unending task of struggling. Why is it such a struggle for us to live lightly in the world? I think Thoreau's trying to turn that struggle into a delight. Just be curious. Learn as much as you can. Understand how the forces of nature are working in your world. So how can we bring Thoreau home to us now? Thoreau shows us that we, the train, Walden, Concord, are part of an ever-active, busy, noisy, changing natural drama of survival, death, and regeneration. The earth is a furnace. There is nothing inorganic. All death leads to life. All destruction of the railroad can't help but create other kind of energies and regeneration and life forms. By developing our environmental imaginations scientifically, poetically, transcendentally, to understand our relationship to nature in this way, we can design a technology and a modern life that fits and blends more harmonious, sound-wise, into it. And I just think, traveling through Southbridge, this is a river town. The river is such a big deal for this town. It's as we walked, we kept wanting to see the river. We kept sort of praying for little glimpses of the river. And you just think, what if the river, what if we had been smarter and we developed this river town in a way that used the river the way humans needed to use the river for energy, but also used the river not as a sewer or whatever else we do to our rivers, but really in a way that understands the way the rivers work and that we need the river. I mean, think if you had a river walk in this town, I would become your sewer. So an accessible river, a healthy river, a canoeable river, just what you could do with what a river town could be. And so that's what I think, that's the using the history and going forward with this just re-energized. And that's why it's great to read Thoreau 200 years later. I keep going back to him because he keeps being really smart, because his situation was just, adjusted for time change, our situation. They were freaking out at the Industrial Revolution and the the destruction of the natural environment. You know that Massachusetts, mid-19th century, 80 to 90% forested, right? A very different landscape when we look at it. What if all those stumps would have looked like? Just sort of blight. So they were struggling with it. And I think he shows us, be interested. See yourself as a part of it. Watch it, understand it, be curious about it, know where you are, rather than just walk by it, travel elsewhere, turn your back on your own environments. If they're really your first commitment, that's really your obligation, is to know. And then, maybe we build a better deep cut because we understand a little bit better about what's going to happen when we plow through the ground in this way, or we build a tunnel that's less prone to earthquakes, or we stop building houses on top of sinkholes, or all the various mistakes we keep making because we didn't bother to learn enough or understand enough about the dynamics of the earth in which we are all so connected. So that's my need for Thoreau and the way in which he kind of keeps checking me to stop, look, listen. And I'm not a scientist, I'm not a botanist, but the poetry takes me a long way. That kind of is my door into the scientific information. So we've got a little time left. I'd be interested in hearing Any problems you have with Thoreau? Anything that you sort of take from him? Experiences you've had at Walden? Questions you have about the?
Well, I think what his writing gives great visuals. Just
So
fantastic.
imagistic.
Yeah,
He paints
because
with
as you're
words.
reading, you can see all this detail. You can see it in your mind.
Traveled a good deal in Walden if you stayed with him. He's a tour guide. He really is. And he puts you in the scene so elementally.
Yes.
You're also like, wow, there comes the Tantivy of wild pigeons. That's so cool.
Would you start with Walden if you were just going to start reading Thoreau, or are there other works that you can start with?
Walking might be a great other thing to start. Civil disobedience is sort of the other side of Thoreau. It's interesting to think about how his political, that's the essay he's most famous for. So if you're interested in political change, that's kind of,
What was that one called?
civil disobedience is the way it often gets. I think it has a bigger title, but it's about when he resisted war taxes for the Mexican War and went to jail for one whole night. And he writes a great essay about it, and Gandhi read it, and Martin Luther King read it. It's sort of a guide to nonviolent resistance. So that's the political, and I could try to spin out just how it connects to the environmental. But that's his other big political influence too. So sounds, Walking, or some of the shorter chapters of Walden, just sort of thumb through it. The Village is a beautiful chapter. He talks about the village. The bean field is really fun. So you'll see he's snarky, he's funny, he's involved. He'll put you to sleep, but that can be nice. That's actually, so just, keep him in your lap, and then when you wake up, read another sentence, and then put him down. A little goes a long way. Just that one sentence, for instance. I've traveled a great deal in Walden. Will just do you for a night, then you're done. Then you can go watch your serial television show, which is so much more exciting. Anyone else? Any other thoughts, comments?
I think he was gifted, not
Yeah.
only in his use of the English language, but the way he interpreted the fellowship with nature.
Yeah.
That's something that's very rare.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
I think he had an advantage because he was in the beginning of mankind attacking the New World.
Yeah.
There were still green places. There were still places to go that were unspoiled
Right.
back in the early 1800s.
Do you feel so deprived now? Do you feel like you've still got a lot of gorgeousness?
I'm 100 yards from the forest where I live, so I don't even see it. When I cross the street, I do see the traffic, but I see the trees on the other side.
You do.
Yeah.
That's good. That helps you deal with the traffic.
There's one way they can improve it here is to finish the rail trail here. Because you can only walk it for a couple of miles and then it just ends.
Yeah. Talk about a great
And the river walk is a
repurposing.
good idea.
Uh,
Should mention that at the next town hall meeting.
So they've been
And,
pushing on this
studies have shown a rail trail, a river walk does an amazing thing for an economy. Like, has anybody seen the High Line in New York? Oh, that's not a rail, it's a repurposing of a rail trail. It's a park.
It's a recreational route.
It has basically changed the meatpacking district in Chelsea. The whole western bottom quarter of Manhattan's become, in a way, it's become too expensive for anybody. But it has it's a beautiful garden walk on a rail trail right in the middle of Manhattan. The special thing about that space is it's about 3 flights up in the air. It was an elevated rail trail. So you're on this elevated park with all of Chelsea and Manhattan. This is like the 16th Street, 17th Street, the West Side Highway underneath you. So it's a really unusual experience. It's a definite thing to. So yes. So anybody else? Why is it so unusual, that imagination? I have to say, I go out and look at the leaves, and I'm interested in the leaves, and I like looking and walking slow. But I don't make connections to me. I don't get great meaning out of it. Like, right, cosmos, or. I don't know, it's got bowels like I do. He sees it in this very associative, metaphoric, poetic kind of way where he's being changed, but the more he knows about nature, the more he knows about himself. Does anybody feel like they're kind of with him there, or does that feel like such a way we're a little far away from because we travel in cars and we don't farm and, we're
It's kind of the way I react to music.
Yeah.
Because I feel a lot of impact on music because I've grown up with it.
Yeah.
And some pieces are very powerful to me.
Yeah.
And I can feel them almost.
Yeah, great, yeah, and he sort of brings out the music of the landscape. If you close your eyes and listen to the roar of traffic mixed with the birds. I live next to a parking lot, and the hum of the computer equipment that runs the business, it's just, the only way I can make my peace with it is to also notice there's a lot, I got wild turkeys, I got all kinds of tin-tabby activity around my house, along with the of the darn computer thing. Yeah, so the music of the landscape is great. for him, you know, the landscape's a book of poetry, so he reads it. Anyone else on, you know, your nature watching habits, or how you take in this sort of very interesting citified / natural
You
landscape?
go to a new location, which I've done, like someplace in Maine or something, that you're on vacation, and you drive through town, you don't really see it.
Yeah.
But I go out to walk and I'm just astounded what I haven't seen.
Yeah.
You know, fascinating thing after one after the other.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of driving.
Yeah, right. Any favorite places in Southbridge that you like? Places you like exploring, or you sort of find your eye gravitating toward?
The Cold Forest?
The town hall.
I like the architecture of the town, actually.
Yes, a lot to look at there.
It is.
Yeah, all natural, brick,
Right.
right out of the earth.
The other thing is, I was married to a guy like Thoreau. My husband was a very nature conscious person.
Really?
More so than I am. I mean, he would see things, but I think as I got getting older, I feel like I am more interested, like a hawk landed very close to my house. I have never seen, I've seen them flying in the air, and I've seen them diving, and you know, that like they have seen something in the field, and they're coming close, but never that close. It was like, oh my, that's a, and my friend was saying, that's a hawk, and I'm going, a hawk?
Thoreau said, in wildness is the preservation of the world. So it's a wild, it's not a pigeon, it's a hawk, right outside the door. Today, literally, one of those wild turkeys came and stared at me in my study window. I was like, oh. Those are big things. A squirrel also stared at me from my other windows. All of a sudden, I was in this total Thoreau environment where they're all peeking. A cat had come in and like looks at me. They're all a bird with a broken foot. I think the cat got. Yesterday, Robin just sort of limped around my patio, looking in my study, kept coming back. Very sad. But yeah, so you can see I have friends.
Well, Westfield Dam was a beautiful place to walk.
Yeah.
There were trails available there, which is fantastic.
Wow, right. Yeah, that's one place we didn't.
We didn't get that far.
Yeah, next
You didn't
tour.
get to Westfield, eh?
We were on foot.
Well, that's all
We
right.
only had so much
It's
time.
25 minutes on
We
foot
were
from
doing
here.
our direct thing. And again, you know, an industrial site that ends up having a real natural sort of attractiveness.
I'm not exactly sure how to say this, but when you go on vacation and you see something amazing, like driving to Alaska or something like that, but when you always come back to your house, it's so good to be home. It's like, if you go out further away thinking you're going to see something spectacular, but it's the feeling you get when you are actually home. Oh, yeah, this is home. This is it.
And the roads that you don't even know what you are.
Oh, yeah.
What is it that you are so glad to see? You know, why does the nature, even here, nice little New England scale, which I find a lot more cozy than Alaska, which totally freaked me out. Way too big a sky, and those mountains, 20,000 feet and more, yikes. You know, what is it that, you know, just makes this, for you, a setting that fits, you know, and that you...
It's just familiar.
It is. But there are
It
things
has a lot to do with it when you're living somewhere.
Yeah,
It's
right.
comfortable.
And the challenge then is to make it strange again, so that you look as if you were looking at Alaska. How to make it, how to get interested in it again, or love its familiarity. But just sometimes the familiarity means that you don't even see it.
But it's in the nature of mankind to explore.
Yeah.
We can't get rid of that. It's in us.
Yeah. Good. There's so much to explore on the web. Our children, have to hope. My students, they spend so little time outdoors. It's not the childhood we had.
No, it's not.
And even some of them still are old enough, didn't have cell phones in their early childhood, but they're nostalgic. I used to make forts, you know. We played in a sand pit, that was really fun. But now
I
it's
saw a funny commercial just recently for one of the internet providers. And they're saying that it's the end of the school year, and the kids are out. But the kids don't go out. They don't go out and play. They go out of the school and into someone's house to get online.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, that's funny. You know,
Yeah.
you see a commercial like that and you laugh and say, that's the way, yeah. That's what kids do now. They don't
Yeah.
go play outside anymore.
Whereas for you, looking out that school window is all about when can I get outside? When can we go run around and, you know, get that.
Then you're off for 3 months, it's a big deal.
Oh, my gosh.
I have
So,
13 weeks to have fun, and you think about that. You don't think about, oh, I'm gonna go home and go online.
the only reason I see kids right now outside is because the house just in back and they put in a trampoline. So they're in this little cage, it's very fun, and they want to be outside. These high school students are not on the computer, but all they do is jump on the trampoline. They're never doing anything else. You know, it's an activity. But, you know, at least it's nice to hear laughter outdoors. You know, it's a quiet neighborhood besides that computer fan. There is a very interesting kind of, you know, strange development, which is a computer game just came out called Walden.
Oh.
And it's pretty beautiful. You do a lot of exploring of Walden Pond through the video game. You turn up rocks and they're little Thoreau sayings. You are Thoreau in the game, so he's your point of view. So he walks around and you move him and you make him go fishing. And you get points if you go fishing. If he doesn't do anything in nature, he starts to die. So you have to go take him out. But what is kind of cool is visually it's gorgeous the way computer games can be. It's incredibly well researched. The bird sounds are done with microphones out, you know, take field recordings. So, but then you're kind of like, okay, so now my kid's indoors playing Walden, the video game.
That's right.
Well, it's better than doing something else, killing people.
Better than assassins or shooting up some, you know, Iraqi soldier scenario like my son would play, whatever game that was.
Well, the first-person shooter games are fun,
Yeah.
but not to do all summer.
Right.
I mean, an hour and you're so tired from killing everybody.
So what the game developers hope is that people will want to, because you can go to the real place,
Yeah.
you'll go and you'll see, you know,
When did this Walden game come out?
just last year.
Oh, okay, so it's relatively
So I've just seen it, you can see it on the web, you can see a little demo. I actually, you know, I didn't think of it, I could have ended with it. But
Do you know what
You
game
could probably
company
guess.
makes it?
I think it was pretty independent group. I don't know who funded it. It's sort of being marketed as an educational tool. Can you get Walden the video game if anybody wants to study? So look at, this is such a classic desktop, right?
Yeah, perfect.
Why go outdoors?
Well, to walk through the natural
Right,
rainbow
I
bridge there.
know, I know.
And look
Somehow
up
they
at
didn't
it.
decide to pick, you know, the dam here. It's always the out west. I've got, there, Walden again.
there it is.
There it is. It was developed by
Game Boy.
Game Boy?
Oh,
there
wow.
it is. Now, I bet it will do a little demo.
It's amazing.
David has his house.
Yes,
The
you build
replica.
his house. Early access alpha now available. We aren't ready quite to push out titles. Walden a game. That's just how to purchase. You can. It shows you more images if you want to just go up.
This way?
No, if you go up, it's giving you a slideshow, just so you can see. There's the hut. You build the hut with him. It shows you some of the routes he took. It shows you walking. You know, he's walking to Emerson's house. He's in Emerson's house. It looks just like Emerson's. That's a house built. It shows you year-round because he was there for 2 years, so he lived the full cycle. That's his survey of Walden Pond you're using. All the rocks are different sort of little stations to visit. You can click on the various sites on the map and it'll take you to the boat or the campfire. So yeah, I mean, they're actually hoping schools and libraries will buy it because it is expensive as an educational tool.
Do we have to look at?
It would be good supplemental material while you're reading it.
Yeah,
And
I'm
we
going
want
to
a field trip to
I'm trying to teach Thoreau this semester, and I will
What would
definitely
Thoreau think?
use
Yeah,
this,
what would
bring this
Thoreau
game
think?
in. I think always cool to see how Thoreau's being, and you know,
Wouldn't it be better to go to a field trip to Walden Pond?
we will do that too, for sure.
I read something about children need vitamin N, nature, and
Yeah.
how they're more depressed, all these symptoms of not connecting and being outside.
Anxiety.
And they need that.
Yeah.
Yes.
The quiet. So one of the things we do in my Thoreau class is they design a Thoreau experiment where they figure out how they're going to live simply on whatever level they want. So a lot of them decide to turn off the cell phone for a day, some a week. Some decide to take a walk every day without their cell phone. And that's the thing, if they go on the walk, they've got the music, right? Or they're texting, they're not looking at where they are, and they feel, it's like a revelation. You know,
They can
it's
hear the
so
birds.
nice. And they can actually, decompress, because they aren't being shouted at with their text messages. Have you ever seen a young person's text scroll? I mean, this must be, 20 messages every 10 minutes. What are you doing? Okay, diner? Nah. And then you have to, and then if you don't respond, dude, where are you? So you're like obligated to constantly, I was telling Margaret, I'm getting to be an old crank because when I walk around campus, they're not watching where they're going.
No.
So you have to keep saying, excuse me, hello, you're in space here, and it's shared. But they're like, they're not thinking, they're after class thoughts, they're not noticing.
And you're getting news from online, and you're in tough shape.
Yeah.
Because they believe everything that comes down the pipe,
Right,
but
yeah.
nobody backs it up.
Facebook,
Right.
yeah, all from these various
Yeah.
um,
You have to watch out
cull
for- yeah.
sites, editorialized sites. Well, anyway, we've gone our full hour. It's been great talking with you. Happy birthday, Thoreau.
Indeed.
Happy birthday, Southbridge. You're 1 year older, I hear. So that's quite an achievement.
We had our party last year, though.
Yeah, as well you should. So, anyway.
Can I
Thanks
just,
for
before
coming.
we finish, I would just like to give a quick shout out for all of the environmental groups that have worked in this community and beavered away to continue to have this appreciation for this environment for the rest of us to appreciate. And I know that people from Conservation Commission, the Trails Committees and stuff like that, and also groups like Opacan Land Trust and the Last Green Valley, because I think they have had a leadership role in this community in terms of providing making sure that spaces are there, advocating on behalf of a community that may not even know what it wants, at a particular time.
Yeah.
And I think we're very fortunate to have that. And I like the idea that we're interstate in some ways. We go across state borders, which are sometimes just, force on us and whatever. And it does make for great camaraderie and fellowship. And just for that, I'm grateful, and for the connections that we as a library can connect out to all of that. So for that I'm grateful. But especially I want to thank Professor Luria for coming this evening, for really enlightening us on Thoreau and making him a lot more friendly towards and more accessible.
So
No, because you have pointed out a lot more access ramps, I think, for me anyway. And I do think that he is probably very underappreciated.
As
We
a
have
writer,
tons of books in the library that access Thoreau in many different ways, and we have access to a lot more through our network. So I would urge anybody who has any interest to please ask, and let's check it out. We've just a few there, but even in our children's department, we've got quite a lot of books, and they're beautifully illustrated, and they just really give you a sense of appreciation.
Actually, children's books are a good place to start
Yeah.
too.
We have
a gentleman who asked, because they'll have captions. You don't have to read, there'll be a nice kind of sampler of greatest hits.
We have pictures, too.
And pictures. Have
Share it with the little one.
Share it, pretend you're, reading it with your child, your grandchild, whatever.
So I'd like to thank Sarah Luria for coming this evening and for really presenting such a great program, which I think we all appreciated, and I'd like to show the Southbridge appreciation.
Thanks for working with me on these quotes. I know it's summer and school's out, but I stay in teacherly mode.
This is fabulous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.